Welcome to our Paralegal Professional Development Program, Setting Smarter Goals. So this is Ann Pearson. I'm the founder and director of training here at the Paralegal Bootcamp. In this presentation, we're going to look at a different way of setting goals that can help you better achieve those goals and encourage you to continually look at ways that you can advance your paralegal career. So if you've attended any of our previous programs already or read anything on the website, then you probably know my mission is for every paralegal to be indispensable paralegal, a valued and respected member of the legal team, and to enjoy every day of your career. I think a way for you to get there, and more importantly, to stay there, is by setting SMART goals. And we're actually going to talk about setting smarter goals. So let's jump right in and get started. So regardless of what time of the year you're watching this presentation, you probably are already acutely aware of how fast the years go by. How many times do you hear someone say, "Wow, I can't believe it's already the holidays. Where did the year go?" Or, "Wow, it seems just like yesterday the kids were starting kindergarten and now they're driving to school." We all know how fast time goes by, especially when you're looking in the rearview mirror. I want to talk about goal setting today because the same thing can happen to your paralegal career if you're not careful. You start out your career with these great lofty goals, but it's right after you've spent 4 years in college and another 6 months or maybe even a year in your paralegal certificate program. It's normal that you're going to want to take a break from learning. It's normal to be sick of school for a little bit. But if we're not careful, before we know it, we're 5 or 10 years into our career, and the only new skills that we've learned are if we're lucky enough to have a really good mentor early in our career, which is not typical for most paralegals. So whether you're in your first year of your career or your 15th year, take a moment to watch this presentation, download some of the tools and resources that go along with it. They're all going to help you set some smarter goals. So today we're going to look at 5 key areas before we actually start talking about setting smarter goals. So first we're going to look at focusing on our behavior more than just setting a goal and hoping that it sticks. Whether or not telling others about our goal helps us stick with it. Third, determining what the return on investment is when we're setting these goals, because that's going to be important. Our time is limited. And then what it means to advance a paralegal's career other than just maybe moving into management, which is not for everyone. And then finally, the new acronym out there, which is setting smarter goals, not just SMART goals. So one thing to keep in mind as we're setting and trying to keep our goals is not to focus so much on the goal and lose sight of actually doing things that are going to lead you to the finish line of that goal. You want to focus on the parts that are in your control. For example, if you want to get a better raise next year, there are things that you have no control over. The manager or the person who makes the decision, the CFO who decides how much money is available for raises, there are all these things out of your control. Ask yourself, what's in your control? Well, if that's your goal, what's in your control is your behavior. Improving your performance, working harder, maybe billing more hours, whatever it is that is going to get you that bigger raise, if that's your goal. Your behavior can get you in a position to be able to reach that goal. So when we're setting the goal, we want to get very specific, and we're going to go through each of those steps. But, when the next year rolls around, we have to focus on that behavior, what we can do each day that helps us move towards achieving that goal. That's assuming it's an annual goal, but a lot of these could be monthly goals that we're going to talk about setting. And we don't want to take all this time to write a smarter goal and then say, well, January is a busy month. I've got all year to accomplish it, so I'll get started in February. Instead, we want to think about what can I do, the 3 important things. What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? What can I do this week? Don't ever think about pushing it to next month. And a very important saying, a goal without a plan is just a wish. I tell people a lot in the billable hour boot camp, to make a plan, like how are you going to get more billable hours this year? You can have that as a goal and say, I want to bill more hours. If you're, say you're working in a defense firm, but just saying that goal or setting it as a goal isn't going to get you anywhere unless you have a plan. How am I actually going to achieve this? So we want to make sure that that's what this program is going to be about, setting a plan. So when we take a break in a little bit to work on an exercise, be sure to do that. The program will stop, the recording will stop. You'll have an opportunity to download the worksheet, work on it, and then jump back into the program. And it's really important that you do that because we want to have a plan, not just a wish. So I did some research, obviously, about goal setting, and there's some school of thought that says if you set a goal and say it out loud, that you may be doomed to fail at achieving it. It's not about jinxing yourself or bad vibes, bad juju from someone that you tell it to. Instead, it's that when you say that thing out loud, you get this good feeling. And I'm using air quotes. I know you can't see, but you get this good feeling. And it's similar to that same good feeling that you get when you achieve the actual goal. That good feeling, satisfaction, when you're saying it out loud, tricks the mind into thinking that you've already achieved the goal. I know it sounds a little crazy because many others will say, well, when you tell somebody out loud something like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds or I'm going to start eating healthier, that you're then holding yourself accountable by telling others. Anyway, I did want to make you aware of this, what I thought was interesting information about verbalizing your goal. There's actually a TED Talk out there that advises when you set a goal, you should zip it. Now, I'm not saying to make it a huge secret, but if that research is correct, you're going to give yourself that good feeling by just telling people and then probably not focus on the behavior that's going to get you to the goal, the things that you can do each and every day to achieve that goal. So give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is you achieve your goal and you don't know if it's because you didn't go out announcing it or if you were focused on behaviors. But either way, as long as you achieve the goal, that's what's important. Our next one, we also want to take into account the return on investment that we're going to be getting by setting and accomplishing these goals or goal. And the reason why, obviously, we all have limited time and money. So if we look at our goal and realize it's going to take 12 weeks and $5,000 to get that certification in e-discovery, and we don't really even have a lot of work at our firm, and all the while we're trying to raise a family and we have a 60-minute commute each way to the office every day. It's not so much a matter of can we do it, because we're all paralegals, which means you can probably do just about anything that you set your mind to. However, you got to ask, is it worth it? What's the return on that investment of my time and money? What's it going to bring me? Is it going to bring me more opportunity with my current employer? Is it going to open the door to another career path? And I can't answer that question for you, what it's worth for you. No one can. Only you can decide what that return on that investment is going to look like in terms of your time and your money. And then we also want to talk about advancing a paralegal's career, because I hear it so often from paralegals. And I feel like I have to address this when we're talking about goal setting, because, well, the glass ceiling is, or the saying is, for paralegals, we don't have a glass ceiling that we have to worry about. It's a brick wall. I hear it. There's nowhere for me to go unless I go get a law degree. Going and getting a law degree to become a lawyer isn't advancing a paralegal's career. It's switching careers entirely. Yes, we work with lawyers, but the skill set of a paralegal is entirely different than a lawyer's skill set. I would dare you to ask a lawyer that you're working with to do your job for one day and see how organized those trial notebooks come out. But that doesn't mean that there's nowhere for a paralegal to go. A lot of you may know my background was that after being a paralegal for many years, I moved into management. And, some people would say that's an opportunity for advancement, but that's not for everyone. Now, as a side note, really the only part of my management position that I liked in the first couple years, at least. I got more settled in my ways after a couple years, but initially the only part I liked was the training. I loved training new paralegals I was hiring. I remember in those first couple years, I wanted to leave and go back to my old law firm and be a paralegal again. Until I talked to other managers who said they had felt the same way their first few years being a paralegal manager. It's a transition, definitely. So yes, we don't really have the true meaning of the word advancement like they do in corporations, where you move up the corporate ladder one rung at a time to higher level titles and positions. It's not necessarily like that, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look to the future and take that potential for future advancement into consideration when we're setting and achieving the goals that we want to for next year. So the SMART goal is the initial acronym. And I've added a new trend, which is now setting smarter goals. So for us, we're going to focus on specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. But we're also going to look at being able to then evaluate those goals on a regular basis and potentially redo them. Just because you set a goal in January that you want to achieve XYZ by September or December doesn't mean that by June that goal should be or is still a smarter goal. So we always want to be able to look back and evaluate and see, are there other things? And so we're going to take a deeper dive into each of these, and we're going to start with specific. Now, I love the journalism questions. You'll see it in a lot of my programs, but here it's particularly relevant when you're asking yourself, is my goal specific? If it's not, then it's not a SMART goal. So in order to know if it's specific, use these 6 W's and ask these questions when you're drafting your goal. Who, what, when, where, which, and why. We'll call them our 6 W's. Let's take a closer look at it. So who might be, now your who question could be different, but a lot of times the who would be, who needs to be involved to achieve this goal? What exactly do you want to accomplish? When do you want to complete the goal? Where do you have to go to get the tools necessary? Which skills or tools will you need to accomplish the goal? And then, of course, what's most important is, why do you want to accomplish this goal? So an example might be, you're a litigation paralegal and you say, I want to be the firm's expert in e-discovery. So then you would ask yourself those 6 W questions: who, what, when, where, which, and why. And then you have to be able to answer them to know if you've got a specific goal. So an example, expert in e-discovery. Who needs to be involved? Maybe you and your manager. If it's going to take time out of your workday, or the manager is the firm or the company that you work for is going to pay for this certification that you want to get, then probably your manager needs to be involved in that goal. What exactly do you want to accomplish? Well, I want to get the necessary experience and credentials to be recognized as the go-to e-discovery person. When do you want to achieve the goal? By the end of the year. Where do you have to go to get the tools necessary? Well, it's going to be an online course. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's not an online course available for what you want to do. Is it going to require you to travel, like after work? Is it going to increase your commute? Is it going to require you to go to a local community college on Saturdays? Whatever it is that you have to go to get the tools necessary. Which skills or tools will you need to accomplish the goal? Maybe you won't need any extra. Just depends on what your goal is. So in this example, we're going to say, well, I want more experience working on e-discovery cases. I'm going to need access to software training, There could be lots of other tools or skills that you need. And then why do you want to accomplish this goal? This why could also be something like, well, because I'm very interested in the technology side of being a paralegal, or I've always had a good knack at technology. Let's look at another example. Let's say that you're in real estate or litigation or the corporate practice group, and you want to transition to the IP practice group. So who needs to be involved to achieve the goal? Maybe in this case, it's not just your manager, but also the team leader for the IP practice group. What exactly do you want to accomplish? Well, I want to get the necessary experience and training and then move to another team. When do you want to do it? Where do you have to go? Maybe the local paralegal school has an IP course. There's nothing online, so it's going to require you to go somewhere. Which skills or tools will you need to accomplish it? Well, you're going to need the knowledge of patents and trademarks. Why do you want to accomplish this goal? All right, so looking at these questions, who needs to be involved? What exactly do you want to accomplish? Let's assume that these are our questions. And we're going to pause. We're going to stop the presentation. You'll see a download to be able to download a SMART goal worksheet where I want you to write out a draft goal that you have. And remember, this is just our drafting process. And you'll notice the first box is asking if it's a specific goal. So go through and answer these questions, the who, what, when, where, which, and why on that. And after you've done that, go ahead and jump back in and we'll continue with the rest of our SMART goal. Hi, welcome back. So hopefully you got the SMART goal worksheet done, just the specific part for now. Answered those questions, who, what, where, when, which, and why. We've worked on our specific portion of our goal. Now let's look at whether or not it's measurable. How can you measure your goal? Well, one way to know if it's measurable is if your goal has a plan that has targets and milestones that you can use to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. You want to be able to measure that you've successfully met your goal. It makes the goal more tangible. If it's a goal that's going to take a few months or even a year to complete, then maybe you set some milestones for accomplishing specific tasks along the way for that ultimate goal. You're also going to receive a goal tracking spreadsheet that will help you with this, particularly for the longer term goals. You also want to know, look at your goal and ask, do you see the words some, more, or less? If you see those words in your initial draft of your goal, it's a good indicator that you're not being specific enough with the measuring of it. How many courses do I need to take? 1, 2, 3? So a goal wouldn't be, I want to take some more courses. I want to take 3 more courses on this particular topic. So look for that, targets and milestones, and make sure that there's a number in there, a specific number, instead of the words some, more, or less. Here's one where, I want to bill more hours next year. That's my goal because this year I didn't meet my annual criteria or billable hour goal. That's your indicator. Now you could say, well, I only billed 1,400 hours, so I just want to bill more than that. The problem is, do you stop at 1,401 because you feel like you've accomplished your goal, even though the target for the firm is 1,500? By saying, I just want to bill more hours, I want to bill more than 1,400, then 1,401 is technically more than 1,400. Now remember, we're not looking at specific anymore because this particular draft goal doesn't answer all of those questions. It's not specific enough. We're just looking at the measurable part. I'm currently averaging 1,400 hours per year, which is approximately 117 hours per month. So the goal, if I wanted to maybe set milestones, would be to increase it by 10% per month. And now remember, this is just measurable. We're going to actually have to make an action plan. How are we going to actually get more billable work? All right, our next one, attainable. A lot of times people confuse attainable with easy. It's not easy. It's realistic. You'll want to include a plan that breaks your overall goal down into smaller, more manageable steps so that it's attainable. Each of those steps make you feel like you have attained something moving towards that ultimate goal. And then do you have the time and resources available in order to achieve that goal? So one might say, I want to go to law school, and they only have their associate's degree, and the closest law school would require them to move to another city while they're raising 3 kids and working. Having law school as a goal might not be a realistic goal for this particular time. Not that it's an impossible goal, and not that it's not achievable, but if those were your circumstances, then getting an undergraduate degree would be a smarter goal because it's the first step that you'd have to take towards going to law school. You know, we want it to be challenging, but not impossible to achieve. Another A word that I like to use, not that A word, another A word that I like to use for the SMART, the A in SMART, could also be action as much as attainable. And I kind of like A for action better because remember, in the specific portion, you're outlining the steps that you have to take. And we'll see in the time-bound section that you have milestones. So I like having action as its own step because you can work on setting all the goals you want. If you don't ever take action, remember, focus on our behavior. If we don't ever take action towards achieving it, then we're just spending our time or spinning our wheels, really, drafting a bunch of goals. Here's an example for attainable. I want to transition to a corporate paralegal position in my firm. If you want to make it attainable, break it down into smaller milestones. Goal 1 might be to successfully complete a course on mergers and acquisitions. Goal 2 might be to work alongside a mentor paralegal in the corporate group. Goal 3 might be to successfully complete a course on UCC filings. All of these are attainable, and remember, they're going to be measurable. All right, moving on to our R, relevant. So a relevant goal is going to move your career forward. Ask yourself if your goal is something that relates to your position. If you're a litigation paralegal whose general overall goal is to become an e-discovery project manager, that's relevant. All of the steps that you take towards achieving that goal, whether you actually achieve it or not, are going to be relevant and help you in your position. On the other hand, if you're a litigation paralegal who has a goal of learning HTML coding or back-end IT work, practically speaking, how will that be relevant to your litigation paralegal position? It might be a handy thing to know. It might be something you've always wanted to learn, but is it relevant? Maybe learning Spanish has always been something that you wanted to do. Your firm represents a lot of Spanish-speaking clients. Speaking Spanish might have been a personal goal of yours, but now it's also relevant to your career. Remember that the reason we're looking at these smarter goals is for development in your career as a paralegal. Ask yourself, what's going to advance my career, and ask if the goal is relevant. Now, relevant is also a really good time to do a check-in on the ROI, the return on investment. It's relevant to my career, it's relevant to my position, it's going to advance my position. What's the return on investment, my time and money that I'm going to put in? And then T for time-bound or time-based. Put a time limit on when you want to achieve the goal, but be sure to include specific times for each step of the process. Back to that e-discovery project manager example, maybe in order to achieve that goal along the way, you have to take some CLE courses on e-discovery, set a time. You also have to take a course on project management, set a time. And ultimately, you want to sit for a nationally recognized certification exam, set a time. And make sure that they're realistic time frames. Realistic doesn't mean easy either, remember. So a realistic time frame, if you know with raising a family and working 40 or 50 hours a week and your commute, that you probably, only have 3 to 5 hours a week to spend on this goal, that doesn't mean you stretch it out for an entire year and say, by the end of the year, I want to have accomplished this 10-hour course. But you also don't want to push that time frame so close that it's not going to be achievable. Here would be an example of a goal. I want to improve my performance. So if you were to use the SMART goal technique, you would combine that with the goal tracking spreadsheet, which you're going to see in the next section to download. And so first you're going to write a description. You're going to look at milestones along the way. You're maybe going to have a check-in on the status, because especially if you've got a lofty goal that's going to take you all year long, you want to have literally scheduled time on your calendar where you do a check-in on where you're at to achieve your goal. Otherwise, just like what we talked about in the very beginning, Before you know it, a whole year's gone by and you haven't even done one thing towards achieving that goal. And then also listing of your resources. So that spreadsheet you'll find handy to be able to do this. And then also keep in mind that we are talking about smarter goals. So you want to schedule time on your calendar, maybe during that check-in. That's when you go in and you evaluate the goal. Is it still relevant? Is it specific, measurable, attainable? Is the ROI still worth it? And if not, then redo the goal. Then go to this template. And here's a screenshot. And the reason I did this in an Excel spreadsheet is you'll see that you can filter, you can sort it by the date. What's the check-in date that I have for this short-term goal? What's the deadline date? What date did I implement it? And that's the part of the plan that you have to set. Here's my goal, but what's my implementation plan? What's my plan on what I need to do to achieve it? And that's our setting smarter goals.